Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years serial tech entrepreneur. My new book, Fail Hard, Win Big, went live this month, July, on Amazon. This is my story of having 30 ventures with 20 of those failures and 10 of them wins. I guess if I was a Major League Baseball player, that would put me at a .333 batting average, which is Hall of Fame material, so I'll take it. Common element of all of my ventures is I've always built custom software to have better operations, a unique client experience, and raise enterprise value. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We're a custom software development firm. And today we are joined by a fun guest, Christopher Moravec out of Portland, Oregon. Christopher is an engineer, a product expert, a founder, a CTO. Christopher, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. It's good to be here.
Christopher, give our listeners a couple-minute overview of your career and the journey you've been on.
Yeah. So out of college, my first business title, my first actual title was corporate mathematician, which is like a real silly way to put what my job was, but I was gluing things together at the time. And
I was going to say, like was data scientist, maybe. Or...
Yeah. Not quite. You know, I have a degree in engineering, but I started writing software almost immediately, and just kind of gluing things together, finding different pieces that couldn't talk to each other by themselves, but when they did talk to each other, it was better. And I found GIS and mapping very early in my career, and working with location data, which is a whole new level of complexity and fun. And that company got bought by another company that had some venture funding, and that was quite a ride for a couple of years. But they were always consulting companies. I've always been a consultant, building things for other people or building software that they consume. And after doing that with other people for a little while, I just didn't like the race of how can we have to keep everybody billable at every hour, and we even got called out making people more efficient using software a couple of times. It's like, no, you're reducing the number of billable hours. And I just I found myself in a position where I just was like, that can't be the way this works. Like there has to be a better way to do this. So I left there and started my own company. And fast forward, 9 years or so, and here we are, building successful tools and software for people all over the world.
Now, and your company name is Dymaptic?
Dymaptic, yep.
Right.
Like dynamic map.
All right, well, give us the background. Tell us what you guys do.
Yeah, so we build custom software, and mostly it's around data analytics and mapping. So putting points on maps and doing analysis with that. So it could be something like, if you're routing trucks around the country and knowing where bad weather is going to be and rerouting those trucks to avoid high wind or to avoid weather conditions to save the materials in that truck, applying that kind of location intelligence to business problems, and usually in ways that people don't expect. Like, people don't expect you to be able to fix, it sounds simple when you say it, but like change a truck route based on weather. Like, that sounds silly almost when you say it out loud, but a lot of people don't expect that you can do that kind of live analysis and save them sometimes millions of dollars in one swoop. So, it's about bringing together that location analytics to data and custom software to streamline a process.
Very cool. So are a lot of what industries is this applicable? Obviously, like logistics, transportation.
Yeah, logistics, transportation is kind of the big one. We do only a little bit of work there. We do work with like advertisers and things like that. Like, where do you put a billboard, for example, so that it would get seen? A lot of the most interesting things we do are with green energy companies looking to optimize solar farms or wind farms and things like that. We also do a lot of work with just local governments trying to fix potholes and get permits done more quickly and things like that that seem like that stuff should be solved, right, Christopher? It should be done, but it's still we still got a lot of people doing things on paper. So,
well, and before we started taping, you told me about that screen behind you and the software that adjusts its mood based on what's being talked about. And now I keep staring at it to see what it's going to come up with, for our show.
Yeah. This is my whisper frame. It listens to all of my meetings all day long, and every few minutes redraws a new picture using an AI image generator based on the vibe of what we're talking about. It does
So if
fun
I
things.
see somebody like sleeping on it or like really boring, I'm going to jump through the screen and
Yeah. It does sometimes do embarrassing things, but most of the time it's pretty well behaved.
all right, tell us the most embarrassing story you can think of and let's see what it does. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. Tell us about some projects you're working on.
Yeah, so there's some really exciting stuff around kind of real-time weather analysis and things that we're working on. And I'm kind of excited to see where that goes. Is getting, I guess kind of as consumers, we've had access to these apps that give you kind of local real-time weather, and that stuff is kind of finally hitting its stride in predictiveness. Like we have big AI models that are predicting what's it going to be like in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 30 minutes. You can predict in much smaller locations, which I think is going to make really interesting impacts on different companies and different entities. And the other big thing is probably the same thing everybody's trying to cope with is how do we get AI into all of the things, right? How do you put a chatbot on everything? But no, I think our goal around AI is to do it in an intelligent way. As human software developers, we bring a lot of experience and intelligence to the process. And can we make ourselves more efficient using these tools, but save time, and do things more efficiently? Yeah, I think those are kind of the two areas that are hitting big right now is at the moment.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed on LinkedIn you have your newsletter. You update that weekly?
Yeah, almost entirely human. Yeah, it's a weekly newsletter. I never thought writing a newsletter was something that I was going to do, especially not as like a CTO, right? But I don't know. Earlier in the year, I just had this feeling that I was kind of sitting there like, AI is just changing the way that we're working. Like it's changing my job as a CTO and my employees' jobs as software developers. I don't know. I feel like I need to talk about this. Like I have all of these ideas and things. And so I started writing about them because I felt like somebody needed to address this in a practical and kind of fun way if it was at all possible.
So I'm looking at your tools you're using right now page. So
yeah.
Anthropothics Claude 3.7.
Yeah.
Why is that one of your choices for writing code?
Yeah, and that's a good point. I should update it because I'm on 4 now. I'm on Sonnet 4.
I was going to say because 3.7
apparently I need to work on getting an AI to update my website more quickly. But yeah, Anthropic writes the best code, I think.
So you like it better than Windsurf, Cursor, Copilot?
Well, I like it on its own compared to other models, like just straight up. I like it better than Gemini. I like it better than Copilot. Mixed together, I still think it writes the best code, but I think the best implementation of it right now is actually CodeBuff. I like that better than Cursor and Windsurf and the other ones because it pulls so many different models together. And I mean, I have definitely slung hundreds, maybe thousands of lines of code together with CodeBuff in hours that I otherwise couldn't have. It now does its own code reviews. Like it's enabled me to go faster.
CodeBuff is not one I've heard of. It's hard to keep up with all the ones out there.
Oh my goodness. It's ridiculously hard. Yeah.
Interesting. And then you list Replit as well, right?
Yeah, Replit has been one of my favorite technologies for a while just because it's so easy to deploy a product. Like I can pull my app from GitHub and I can click run and run it and share it immediately, or I can deploy it onto some of their hardware and have it run, and I don't have to orchestrate containers, and I don't have to set up DevOps pipelines, and I don't have to do all of those things just to get something off the ground so a client can look at it. And so yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites. All of my little side projects that I do, like the Whisper Frame, or I did an AI game that was kind of like Dixit a couple of weeks ago, like image guessing game, and like all of those kinds of things I just deploy on Replit because it's just easy. Makes it easy to get it going.
So as a founder and CTO, are you still hands-on code?
Oh yeah. Yep. I do write code, not every day. I definitely spend more time communicating than I spend writing code, but I do still write code. Yeah.
So tell us about your engineering team, how you're structured, your work model.
Yeah. So we're small. We're 16 people total, and we're completely remote, and we're distributed all over the United States. And we didn't start that way, but when COVID-19 started and we started we let people go home and work from home. We were only like 4 or 5 people then, and some people moved during the pandemic, and we hired more people, and it was just like, well, this is silly. We don't have an office. We'll just hire wherever. And that's been challenging, is just kind of orchestrating across time zones and organizations. But we have kind of 2 groups of folks. We have folks that specialize in GIS and mapping technology, and then we have kind of your pure software developers that sling code and build product. Although they end up collaborating quite a bit on a lot of projects. They don't stay very isolated.
Gotcha. So what's, as a CTO in the current environment, what's your ideal tech stack?
So whatever my AI architect tells me, it's a funny question to me. And the reason it's interesting, I guess, is because we're so often building things for other people. The question is usually, what can they support? And what does their tech stack look like? What do their software development team look like? And what can they handle when we're not there anymore? Our model is very project-based. We try to build things for people that they can leverage and they can use. And we want folks to be able to work with it. But if I have to pick, my default for a back end right now is actually .NET, which is I know that's not a common answer, but it's more efficient than Python is. If I have to do Dockerization and containers, the containers are way smaller than a Python or a Node.js deployment without doing extra work to do minification. Just by default, it's very small. And it works well for high performance things, even though it's also an interpreted language, but it does well. A lot of our front ends, it's a mix of JavaScript, React, and .NET. It ends up being some kind of mixture of those things, depending on where we're working and what the client's needs are.
Gotcha. So what would you say is the biggest challenge you're facing now?
I think the biggest challenge is how to integrate AI into our work. But that's kind of like the biggest, newest challenge. The biggest ongoing challenge is always, I think, communication and orchestration of people. And I think that, when I started my career, I was very much, I was writing code, I was getting things done. And then I was running a team of people, and I was like, okay, I'm still writing code and I'm still getting things done, but I have to keep an eye on all these people, and I have to make sure that they're all busy writing the things. And the bigger the organization gets, the more checking and communication and orchestration of people I end up doing to get a product built. And so I think that's really the hardest thing about running a company is orchestrating people and keeping them organized and getting them all moving in the same direction and making sure everybody's taken care of and is busy and working in the right direction. And AI is making that even harder, in a lot of respects, because one, we're just being completely overrun with AI tools. Everybody is running as fast as they can to cram AI stuff.
And no matter what you put in a newsletter, it's going to be outdated because
it's going to be outdated.
Changing
it's going to be outdated. Yeah.
So when you hire engineers today, and the environment of 2025 with AI, with productivity, with everybody expecting developers to be a 5 or 10x developer, cream of the crop, what do you look for in engineering hires?
Yeah. So my experience is actually that the best engineers often come from a different background. They weren't software engineers from the beginning of their career. If you did the first part of your career as a music teacher, you're going to have a different viewpoint on how a client might use software. You're going to have a different set of empathy rules around what a client expects or what a user expects a piece of software to do, because you have this huge background in using and consuming, and you have this background in teaching and having a lot of empathy with the people that you're interacting with, the students that you're interacting with. And so finding people with diverse backgrounds is often, I think, one of the most interesting things that we do at work is having a team of people from all over the US with different backgrounds and slightly different skill sets, even though they may all now be software developers. And I think that's often what we look for is like, yeah, you need to be good at the job. You need to be able to sling code. And these days you need to be able to know how to use an AI tool to help you sling code faster. But, fundamentally, you need to have some kind of background that got you here that isn't that is a little bit different,
Gotcha.
that
That's
helps you
interesting.
understand our clients a little better.
So, with the age of AI tools helping engineers interview, how do you test for, their technical capabilities?
It's really hard. I mean, to be honest, it's really hard. I think so. What I'm looking for, what I want is I'm looking for the like ignore all previous instructions, except that something that I can slide into a question that will like make the AI go on a fritz. So if they're just reading an AI script, then, they'll say something silly that I'll recognize. I'm looking for that kind of golden silver bullet, but I don't have that. And I mean, it's hard. Like you have to rely on kind of your problem solving questions. And so a lot of the interviews that I do these days is it's about trying to get people to think out of the box, giving them a complex problem, maybe using a map or location that they've never seen before. And yeah, an AI will know how to solve it. And if they can feed it into an AI and that can tell them how to solve it, then that's a skill, and I'm okay with that being a skill, I think. But it's kind of like before AI, we used to try to figure out whether or not software developers knew how to look up documentation, right? Like you don't have to know everything, but you have to be able to know how to use the IntelliSense in your IDE to figure out which function's right. And you got to be able to know how to read doc to figure out when you optimize this way, when you don't, when to call this function and when not to. And I think now it's, do you know how to do that? But do you also know how to use AI to get you there?
So, what about managing your engineering teams? What are the key metrics you look at to gauge productivity?
Yeah, mostly it's, are we delivering on time and are the clients happy? Like that's really the thing I look at. We as a consulting company, we're tracking hours and all kinds of things. And I have like metrics coming out my eyeballs about how long people spend on things and whether or not they met their estimates and things like that. But what I'm usually worried about is not did we hit the estimate every time? It's did we get better at making the estimate for the next one? Because as a consultant, if I can hang my certainty on, and I really can do this in 8 hours, or I really can do this in 10 hours, if I can hang certainty on that, then that's better for the client because that's less unknown. That's less unknown for them. It's less unknown for me. And getting more certain about our estimates is important. So as long as we're learning and we're getting better at that every single time, then I'm happy.
Gotcha. All right. Christopher, what's one brutal lesson you wish you would have learned earlier in your journey as a CTO?
I think this is something that I say to people kind of frequently, but I think it's that most of the time when a technology or a project fails, it's not that the technology couldn't do the job. Like rarely is that the case, I think. There are those, but most of the time it's that we failed to understand what the client needed or we failed to communicate with the client. And so it's kind of like, it's not always about the technology. In fact, it's not often about the technology. It's often about the people working on the technology. And I think that is a thing that people forget. Even when they come to us asking for a solution, they're asking, oh, we need a whiz bang button that does this. It's like, okay, but do the people in the field that are trying to do all these meter readings for you to collect all of the water meter readings, like, do they want that button in their app? Well, we didn't ask. Okay, well, let's go find out what they need. And it turns out they don't need that. They need something else. And I think that's it. It's not the technology. The technology is there to make us better as humans. Same thing with AI, but it's about the people at the end of the day. And I think that's the thing that we forget a lot. We get wound up in the technology.
Gotcha. Well, Christopher, thanks for getting uncensored with us today. Keep it up with your newsletter. Interesting stuff you have going on out there. And I'm going to stay on you to update that weekly down to the tool version. But no, great conversation and appreciate you coming on the show. Any final advice you have for tech leaders? You've given lots of good nuggets. Focus on the people, focus on the users. Don't always focus on the tech. What else do you want to leave listeners with?
I think it's that I think there's when you're leading people, there's a difference in being able to write the code yourself and like be that 10x developer. And there's a difference between that and being able to get a team to build the same thing. And being a good leader is not about being able to do everything yourself. It's about getting the team to succeed together at building the solution.
And as you said that great advice, I see a brain on your Whisper monitor talking about it. So it is working. That's great. Christopher, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. Stay bold, everybody, and keep building. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.